Yay! Let's see if this will work now. I'm trying to make a video for YouTube to share with some fellow teachers, some colleagues every once in a while. Oh yes, my name is Grace Batten, and every once in a while a colleague will either email me or ask me questions about teaching English as a second language or teaching English as a foreign language, which is what I love doing. I love teaching languages. And I have a little bit of experience under my belt. I've been teaching English as a foreign language for a little bit. Teaching English as a second language for a little bit over a year. And I taught English as a foreign language in Brazil for a little over a year too. So I'm almost getting to the 3-year experience mark. And I have a few tips to share with you guys if you're willing to listen. The other day, one of my colleagues asked me if I had any suggestions on regarding activities to do with her class. And sure, I have a lot of suggestions. But before we start talking about the suggestions, I wanted to talk about understanding how the adult learner learns. The adult learner, the adult student, the adult language learner, adult language student doesn't learn quite like a child does. The learning steps in language acquisition are very similar for children and also for adults. It's the same steps. You listen, you repeat. You listen and repeat, and there's a lot of repetition in this process. And the thing is that children are learning language, they're acquiring language within a context. They're manipulating objects, they're doing things, they're laughing, they're crying, there are emotions attached to their learning experience. They're being engaged. Their senses are being engaged, and that's an important part of the learning experience, regardless of what you're teaching, regardless of what you're learning. You have got to engage your senses. And unfortunately, the traditional way of teaching is the student comes to the classroom, sits down, and the teacher talks, and the teacher writes what she or he is teaching on the day on the board, or the students might be given handouts, and that's it. And they leave the classroom, and some of them will fare well with that style of learning, and some of them won't. Some of them won't grasp as much as you wish they would with that style of teaching that you're using, because we have different styles of learning. We're different. Not only do we come from different backgrounds, we also have intrinsic traits, characteristics about ourselves that make us different. Though we're all very, very, very much alike, because we're human beings, we also do things differently and we learn differently. Many of you may have heard of the different intelligence theory, the different intelligence. I think it's a theory. Yeah, it's a different intelligence theory. So different people are good at doing something, and they might be good at doing math, but they may not be good at learning a language. And you have to be able to recognize that in your students. You'll be teaching a large group of students, and you have some of them who speak great English, but they can't write. And you have those who can read great, but they can't really talk. And nothing should surprise you. You need to take them as they come. You need to embrace your students, and as their facilitator, as their instructor, you just have to adapt to the way that they learn. Okay. Hello. I have my cat right here trying to pipe in and say hi. So that's my first thing. That's the first thing that I wanted. That was the first point that I wanted to make. That you have to understand that your adult learner won't learn the same as if you have a child as your child. There are so many constraints, there's so many factors in this equation that make it different for them. So you have to keep that in mind. A lot of them, they come to your classroom after a long day at work. God knows what they're going through in their private lives, and you have to work with all of that. You have to be sensitive and compassionate, because life is harder for them, especially when we're talking about immigrants. Life is a little bit harder for immigrants because they're outsiders. Not only is the culture different, sometimes they have to face challenges that Americans, whether they're black or white, don't have to come across. Oopsie. Here we go. So you got to keep those things in mind. What else did I want to say? So the adult learner learns differently. There are different constraints. There are different factors that affect their learning outcome. So you need to keep that in mind. But remember, they also need what the little ones, with the little kids, need to learn a language. They need the structure. They need to listen. They need to hear it. They need to repeat it, and they will need to repeat it a lot. And there's a style of teaching called total physical response, and I was able to experience it and learn about it in this latest workshop that I attended through our church. And basically, you're using your body parts to elicit responses from your students, and your students might also, if I'm not mistaken, they will also use their bodies to make connections with a language, which I think is outstanding. Something else the instructor mentioned in this workshop is that if you can bring in music to the classroom, so if you want to take notes, bring music to the classroom. Get to know your students. They might be at a very elementary phase of their learning, so that you can't find out too much because they don't have the language to communicate yet. But as much as you can, try to talk to them when they're having communication practice. Try to talk to them, go around the classroom and find out what they like. We have to make that personal connection with the student. Sure, we're not going to get personally involved, but we have to make that connection with them, because that will help something to click in their brain, something to help them. Now, when you know that you're cared about, when you know that somebody cares for you, it just opens up your learning. What would the word be? Hold on, let me think. It just helps you to learn better. If you know that somebody cares about you and that they are intent on helping you to learn. So I said, bring music to the classroom, and those might be little children's nursery rhymes or whatnot. And if you're happy and clap your hands, it might be termed a nursery rhyme, but you know what I mean. You might bring those little children's songs to the classroom that the little ones learn early on, and it won't upset them. It won't upset your adult learners that they are singing or using those songs in the classroom setting. They'll be happy. That has been my experience teaching English in Brazil. They enjoy it. And you have to keep in mind that a lot of those learners, they can sing better than they can speak, because when you're singing the English language, there's a rhythmic pattern to it that they can't reproduce when they're first learning the English language. They can't reproduce that rhythmic pattern, but they can do it while they're singing, and that's good exercise for them. The Hokey Pokey is a fun song to bring in the classroom, and it doesn't mean that you're going to spend an hour singing songs or doing this kind of stuff with them, but even if you spend 10 minutes with them doing this silly stuff, if you will, it will make a world of difference. You will notice that you see that the shine in their eyes. You see their eyes. There's a light in their eyes. There's something that happens inside of them when they're not just sitting there. They're actually doing something. They're actually singing. And my colleague mentioned bringing some artwork to the classroom, and that is wonderful. It's a wonderful thing to do too. If you can bring in photographs, if you can bring in that's another. There's another activity that I learned about in this workshop, and it has to do with spotting differences in pictures. And that's another thing that you can do. You can have them pair up, working in pairs, and talk about what they see that's different. Like they'll have two pictures to compare, picture A and picture B, and you can adapt this activity for more advanced levels. You might give the more advanced students real life pictures instead of just drawings. But for the very beginner student, you could just give them this type of drawing right here. And there's a book that has lots of pictures for students to spot the difference and talk about, and it's called Look Again Pictures book. And I thought this was one of the coolest activities to do, even if you're not an English language learner. Just if you're with your girlfriends, with your group of friends, and you want to have something to do, something fun to do, that's great. Now, something else that is great to do with your students, that's great to do with English learners is, now this might require them to be at the intermediate level, but as you will see, you can adapt just about anything if you have to. If they don't have the structures to ask the questions that you need to complete this activity, you can give it to them. You can give them a model of how to ask the question and a model of how to answer the question. So this next activity here is called Information Gap Exercise. And there are two parts. There are two slips. There's a slip titled Job Openings A. Is that right? Yes. And the other one is Job Openings B. So they'll be working in pairs, and you give student A one of the slips, and you give student B the other slip. You have to model this activity for the class, so you will have to have somebody else at the front of the class, and when you're modeling this. And let's see what else I wanted to say. If you're working with beginner students, you can give them a model of how to ask the questions. Basically, what you're doing is they're working together to fill in the gaps. So you have some information here. You have the job, the hourly wage, and the hours that certain professionals work. So we have security guard, teller, receptionist, salesperson, computer programmer, and accountant. And student A doesn't have all the information. He has some of the information, but not all of the information. And student B has information that student A doesn't have. and student B will also have to work. Will have to work cooperatively. Oopsie. Student B will have to work cooperatively with student A in order to fill in those gaps. Okay. I think it's a great activity, and you can adapt this activity for all types of levels. I mean, you can make it as sophisticated as you wish. You can help the beginner students by giving them the structures first. You can have that the structure, the model sentences of the model sentence questions typed up on a sheet of paper, and have the model answers right below them, with a little gap, with a little blank, so they'll fill in the blank with the answer that they will have to give to their partner. Okay, so this is a great activity that I learned about in the workshop that I attended 2 weeks ago. And let's see what other activities I wanted to mention. So if you're already using a textbook, I do recommend using a textbook. And I'll speak from my own experience here. All right, I went to Georgia State University, and some teachers like giving handouts besides using a textbook, and some handouts were just too much. I mean, having a million handouts was just overwhelming to me. I would rather the teacher stick to one textbook rather than give me so many handouts. But sometimes students can't afford to buy the book, and you might have a reproducible version might have a reproducible textbook. So you will have to make copies for your students, and sometimes you have to go through other textbooks to get what you need to address your students' needs. So if you do that, I recommend that you have the 3 holes punched already in advance for them. And if you're giving them more than a page, like if each chapter is more than a page, then go ahead and staple it for them. It will help them to keep it together. That's something that I do with my students. Something else that the instructor talked about in this workshop was having one textbook that you'll be using with your students. And I think that is paramount. It's very important. Sure, you can go to other textbooks if you have to. You can make handouts from other sources if you have to. But for us, I don't think only for English language learners, but for anybody, knowing that you are moving forward, knowing that you're completing coursework that's laid before you, I mean, it makes you feel good. It makes you know that you have a basis, you have structure, and you're going somewhere. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. Okay, so I recommend having one textbook, and if you have a large group of students, make it available for them to purchase the book. You could order the books for them on Amazon. These are very inexpensive books. I think you can buy them brand new from Amazon.com, the Step Forward series, and the student will get the textbook, which comes with the CDs, the listening CDs. It comes with the CDs, and it comes with a workbook for $23, $24. That's a deal. That's a really good deal. So I recommend making the textbook available for purchase to the students, okay? Because they like having that source. They like having something together for them. And $23 isn't that much. I know that some of our students really can't afford it, but make it available for them. Let them choose whether or not they want to buy the book. If you're not using a reproducible book, right? I mean, if you're using a reproducible book, give them that option. And if you're not, they'll have to get the book. They'll have to buy the book regardless. Let's see what else. So what you need to do is engage your students. Try to bring as much from the outside world as you can to the classroom, because students, that's how people learn. They learn by doing, they learn by seeing, they learn by hearing, and they need to have their senses engaged. You hear me say that a lot. I mean, their sense of smell, their sense of hearing, their sense of tasting. And if you can have, even if it's just 10-15 minutes of your class time planned for this purpose, I think you see a difference. You see a great difference, and your students will tell you, they will give you feedback on the activities. You're gonna love it, and it will help them to learn better. Let's see what else. There's another activity that I learned about, and I wanted to share, and another communication practice activity, and that's an interview. That's the interview one. It's called interview. So you interview every class member to discover specific information. But what you do is you you place the students in 2 equal lines facing each other. Then you do the activity with the person you're facing. While one line remains in place, the second line shifts one person to the right. The person on the right end moves to the left end of the line. And then you do the same activity with the person who is now across from you, and you continue this until you reach the person that you started with. Okay, it's great because even though you'll be asking the same questions, you're doing it with a different person. So it might take the advanced students maybe a couple minutes to ask 3 questions to ask their partner, and then to answer the same questions to their partner. But because you're asking different people, they'll be hearing different answers, and it will feel like a totally new activity. And I think that's what we're looking for. It doesn't take too much time to prepare for this activity, and they will love it. So my suggestion is implement this. You've heard that, okay, if you're teaching for an hour, you want your students to speak as much as possible. That's why they come to class, because they want to learn how to communicate, especially verbally. They don't come to class because they want to become writers. Not most of them anyway. They went to class because they want to be fluent. They want to learn how to talk. And my own students have expressed to me that they love talking with their classmates. They love communication practice activities, and they look forward to them. So give them a chance to practice what they've learned with you and from you, what they've learned from you and with you too. Sometimes you learn with them because you're learning as you go. So incorporate these activities into your class time. At the workshop, the instructor said that we should give students at least, I think that's what he said, at least 40% of class time to talk, to communicate. So we provide the structure, we come up with the activity, and we tell them how to execute that activity in the classroom, and they should have at least 40% of class time to talk, to communicate, to practice talking. And then move on to your textbook, to your whatever handout you have for them. Go over it with them, and the Step 4 series is a great textbook to use. It also comes with a teacher's guide, and it really saves you a lot of time because the lessons are already made for you. Surely you will have to add your own your own thing to the lesson. When you're lesson planning, you have to spend time planning for your lesson if you want to address your students' needs. Oh, there was something else that I wanted to talk about, and that is, all right, you give your students homework, and each of them has a need, right? I won't encourage trying to address each individual student's needs, because you won't have one-on-one time to follow up with them. Most likely our time is limited, and we have 1 hour, and usually we have 1 hour a week to work with them. And then sure, they can email you, and they can send you text messages, they can ask questions, but most of the time they don't. So if what I suggest that teachers do is that if they see an error, if they see a mistake happening over and over and over in the writing, in the homework of several students, then pick that one thing to work on. Pick that one topic, that one subject to work on, and search the internet or whatever books you're using. Compile a study aid for them, and try to find some exercise, some online exercises that you can print out and give to them as a form of assessment and as homework too. Now, a lot of times when I do that, I can't find anything specific that will cover the material that I'm teaching them. So I just make my own up. I just do my own thing, and that's what I do. I really have talked a lot, almost 30 minutes, but I needed to cover these things to answer some questions that my colleague asked me. And if you have any questions, just email me, battengrace@gmail.com. And if you work with me, or you know where to find me, just come up to me and you ask me the question, whichever way. And I hope that you have a great week, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.